It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. Today, we have a special guest, Derrick Mosley, who is going to share a story with us from his life and a story of overcoming, as we like to talk about here on this podcast. And we'll get straight to that interview right after these important messages. This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by the 79th Faulkner Bible Lectureship Sunday, October 22nd through Thursday, October 26th on the campus of Faulkner University in Montgomery, Alabama. This year's theme is Reconnect. The Jenkins Institute's Better series will be a part of the program in 2023, along with sessions geared towards youth and family ministry. There will be daily chapel programs and evening keynotes to encourage and equip you in your walk with Christ. The mission of Faulkner University is to glorify God through education of the whole person, emphasizing integrity of character in a caring Christian environment where every individual matters every day. For more information, go to faulkner.edu or click the link in the description of this episode. I'm Travis Creasy. That's all-pro counselor with 3-Chord Counseling in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Ben Hayes, how are you, Ben?
Man, I am doing good. It has been a busy weekend, a busy week of volleyball before that. And so I was really having a hard time getting off the couch today to record, but it's going good. Busy is good sometimes, so it's all right. Will Myhan is with us. How you doing?
Man, I'm good. I noticed Friday night it was your 25th graduating class anniversary, which means you are an old man, sir. So
officially old, yes. And that was why I was busy all weekend. We had that Friday night, then another one Saturday, and spoke at West Huntsville on Saturday morning. So it's just been kind of a whirlwind.
Yeah. Travis, we were at the Marshall game, and Marshall had a close one, 76-0. So then our tied one. So spoke at Rush. It's just been a good weekend, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm about 2 weeks out. I guess Central does their graduating classes different. So I'm actually doing my 25th at the football game here, I think October the 6th or something like that. And so once again, I'm there right there with you, Ben. And so I can't call you too old, although you got 9 months on me. But
always,
as I mentioned in the intro, we have Derrick Mosley with us today. And Derrick, I've seen a video where you describe your story today, and I don't know that interesting is quite the word best description. But harrowing, or, we'll let you describe it. But Derrick, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get in. You can go ahead and get into your story from there.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you guys for having me. This is my first pod, so I listen to a lot of them, but I'm thrilled to be on it. Yeah. So there is a video out there floating around, and what happened was we. After all the events that happened, we started the process of creating a 501c3 nonprofit. I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, so when we were doing that, we were looking for a particular type of machine that we looked to purchase for local fire departments. So I called Stryker, the company that makes these machines, and was asking them some questions. And somehow I was talking with the sales rep, and I got into the story, and he was like, well, tell me that again. What happened? So one thing leads to another. And the next thing I know, they're sending a film crew from Seattle to Muscle Shoals, and they come to our house for an entire day. They spend another day with the first responders and create a little documentary, because they want to take it and use it at their international sales meeting. And then so they came and did that, and then we went out to Seattle in July and spoke to their employees, and they had us sort of via satellite or whatever sent around the world to their other employees. So I was a little nervous, but anyway, that's how the video came about. And then they gave us the video. But anyway, to back up a little bit, I'm 48 years old, father of 4 boys. I work in the wealth management field for PNC Investments. I've been doing that for about 20 years. So back on April 25th, my wife and I had been on a work-related trip the weekend before. April 25th was on a Monday. And on this trip, we'd been riding bicycles all weekend and having a good time. And we got in, and on that Monday, I was a jogger, maybe a slogger, wasn't much of a pace.
Join the crowd.
Yeah. So anyway,
you're in the right place, man.
Yeah. So I'd been out on a jog and came back in. Melissa, we live in Muscle Shoals, so Melissa had driven to Florence to pick up 2 of our kids from Morris Hill. And when she was on her way back, I called her because I was having some chest pain. And she said, well, you seem to relax. I'm sure, don't get yourself worked up. And I was like, okay, I'll try to relax. So then the arm started bothering me and having some discomfort there. So when she got home, I was standing outside, and she's a nurse. And she said, and when she pulled up in the driveway, she said, look, I don't think it's anything, but let's just go get it checked out just in case, because it was still persistent. So we live off of 6th Street here in Muscle Shoals. So we pull out so we get in the car and we pull out on the Wilson Dam Road, and we're headed to Namsey. And I just go out, and there were no symptoms, no warning signs. And so she pulls up, she can tell that I've passed out. So she reaches over for a pulse, can't get one. And she just pulls over on the side of the road. At the time I was 200 pounds. She drags me out somehow to the side of the road, starts chest compressions. And then at that point, this hero, who was an off-duty firefighter, pulls over almost instantaneously, calls for help. He relieves her, and then the emergency EMS folks show up a few minutes later. And long story short, I went without a workable heartbeat for about 42 minutes there on the side of the road on Wilson Dam Road. And a lot of your audience will have seen the video that we're talking about, because we put it on Facebook because, we thought it was such a powerful story, act of the good Lord, to pull us through. So anyway, so that was kind of the first phase of the story. The second, and then we get to the hospital. When we get to the hospital, we found out later that there wasn't anyone at the hospital that thought I was going to survive, because I was shot 9 times. And then, I had this Lucas machine, and most of your audience, I didn't know what a Lucas machine was. My wife didn't know what a Lucas machine was. It's a machine that they strap on you that looks like a medieval torture device. But basically it gives perfect chest compressions.
Oh, wow.
Nonstop. So I was on that thing for 35 minutes. And normally, the professionals will tell you that they call it at 30 minutes, but my wife was outside the ambulance screaming, you can't let him die. So they kept on. So about minute 34, after the ambulance had arrived, they heard me kind of groaning. So they stopped the Lucas machine, and they got a heartbeat and got me up to the cath lab. I coded again in the cath lab. So anyway, I ended up getting 2 stents, and I think there was a lot of concern that I wouldn't make it through the night because the heart muscle was so weak because all they had been through. So Melissa had a lot, and I wish she was here. She's a little under the weather, but she had a lot of difficult conversations with physicians that night that she never really shared with anyone else. And the concern was making it 48 hours without some kind of arrhythmia because the heart was so weak. We made it through that, and then I was on a heart pump. I was on a ventilator, and I don't know, lots and lots of medication. And like on day 2, Melissa asked the cardiologist, she's like, once we get home, and he was like, you need to stop right there. We're a long way from that. We have to get through all this. And if we ever get home, then we'll be really lucky. So anyway, so that was on a Monday. They start, by Thursday, they start kind of weaning me off of the ventilator. And then on Friday, they take out the heart pump and the ventilator. I kind of wake up Friday night, And then I'm heavily medicated. So, you know, I say some crazy things that my kids could tell you about. But from that point forward,
they get videos?
No, they didn't. They got some crazy pictures. There is a video that I sent to my friend that they'll pull out every once in a while.
All right.
I was trying to give the impression that I was feeling, that was great. I was feeling really good. And obviously I was not in good shape. So anyway, so that next Wednesday, I come home, probably shouldn't have. So I came home that next Wednesday with a defibrillator vest. And what that is, it's a wearable, it's kind of like a bra, I guess. I gained a whole new appreciation for ladies that have to wear those because I could only take it off to take a shower. And when I took it off, I was like, oh, this feels so good for, 15 minutes. So I wore that for 50 days because, your heart function is measured by something called an ejection fraction. All of normal ejection fraction is between 50 and 70. Well, they checked mine the day after the event. It was 25. Wow. So if it's low, then you have a higher risk of throwing an arrhythmia. So with that defibrillator vest, if there is an arrhythmia, it'll shock you, shock your heart back into rhythm. So then there was the one night where one of the sensors came off. So it started making a noise and we thought it was about to shock me, but we didn't read the instructions close enough to know that if it's going to shock you, it makes a different sound. So anyway, we became acquainted with how it works real fast that night. So anyway, so that first phase of the story is the roadside. My wife being an absolute hero, and Ben Chester and all the people that Ben Chester is off-duty firefighter. So he actually went with us to Seattle to help share our story. And then I got the defibrillator vest off after 50 days. We went back and did another echocardiogram, and my ejection fraction was 60. So there was no heart damage. Wow. I got the 2 stents. And then, after we got the defibrillator vest off, from that point forward, sort of the emotional healing part of it started, because from the time I got home from the hospital, it was just like, okay, am I going to make it? Am I going to survive? And then once it became apparent that I was going to be okay, then the PTSD from what we went through, really started, rearing its head. And since then, it's something I've been dealing with. And, that's what I'm most interested in about, in talking about wherever I can. Because, mental and emotional health is obviously, it can't get enough attention. And I have so much respect for what you guys do with this podcast and addressing it. And I heard, I've heard several of your podcasts, and that's why I was happy to come and talk about that, because the physical part of what I went through was very easy. I bounced right back. I'm in better shape now than I've ever been. I didn't have any difficulty, but the emotional side of it, just to be very transparent, has been a beast to kind of learn to trust your body again. And I know that's my dad had open heart surgery. I know a lot of people who've had heart surgery, and I know yours was, not exactly open heart surgery, but you had a heart event, and that comes along with that a lot of times. Yeah. Many people who I've talked with, I guess everybody I've ever heard, so they have to go through that kind of phase of life, and they're not prepared for it. Like the doctors don't always tell you that. No, that part of it was not addressed at all. And everybody that helped me are heroes. And I've gotten, it's not anything. Yeah, it's just kind of the system that, you're sent home with no kind of, guidance relative to, emotional health and how to deal with this, terribly traumatic event. So, anyone that, and you don't have to go through what I went through, obviously, to struggle with anxiety and depression and whatnot. So, I just want to be a voice out there that says, if you are struggling, go get help, because through my employer, I was able to find a counselor that gave me the tools to become, mentally healthy again. Because initially, you know, it started off with, I didn't want to go anywhere if Melissa wasn't there, because, you know, what if this happens again? And, you know, I didn't have any warning signs before, so I need her to be here. So, you know, I think a lot of times anxiety and depression, it kind of wants to box you in to where you don't want to go anywhere, you know? So, you know, kind of using the tools that I picked up, you know, in therapy has been a complete game changer.
What were some of those, I guess, initial, just kind of staying on the mental health side of it, if you don't care to answer, what were some of those initial symptoms, I guess, of PTSD, of anxiety, whatever symptoms you were having that said, I need to go find a counselor, I need to talk to somebody? Yeah.
So, you know, and it's I was telling Melissa this yesterday, we were talking about sort of the journey, and, you know, it's my understanding, and y'all are the experts, but it's my understanding that, you know, anxiety is just an emotion. It's, you know, it's kind of your body checking in to say, hey, are we okay here? But my anxiety, you know, settles right in my chest. So anytime, you know, there's a stressor or some kind of event that, you know, it sits right here. So I'm like, okay, so. Which is also where your heart is. Exactly. My cardiologist is like, well, just remember what it felt like. And I'm like, I can't remember what it felt like. So, so, you know, there's that, you know, the anxiety part that just, I guess, the stress that was settled there in my chest. And then I could have some indigestion, you know, and I'd be like, okay,
wait a minute.
Yeah. So, you know, just learning that, you know, again, just to trust your body again was a real challenge, because every time you get a chest pain, you're like, okay, should I need to go to the ER? Because my cardiologist, who's fantastic, he told me that if he'd have had my profile and he was having the same symptoms, that I wouldn't have went to the ER, because he said, I would have thought there was no way it was my heart. And then that Friday I was telling you about earlier, when I woke up, my brother-in-law, I was kind of like, what am I doing here? And he was like, you just had a massive heart attack. And I was like, there's no way. And he's like, oh, and I could tell pretty seriously that he wasn't joking, you know? So the chest pain, any kind of chest discomfort, you're automatically like, okay, here we go again, you know?
Yeah. So I think it's hard for the doctor, right? I mean, we talk about it, and they're doctors that are trying to do the physical thing, but we just don't know how each person's going to be affected, you know, and so you got to have that personal counselor, that personal touch. We probably could all share what our stress does to us. And, you know, I had a bone marrow biopsy, so my hip hurts. You know, if I get really stressed out, my hip hurts. Or I've woken up at night and had bone pain throughout my entire body. And I just have to walk myself through. That's not happening anymore.
Right.
You know? So I guess my question is, like, how do you handle that? How do you decompress? You know, or have you learned tricks that work with you? And we're not sitting here trying to give everybody details and practical things, but something they might could try. Something that you do, 2 or 3 things maybe that you do that help you de-stress in those situations.
Well, one thing my therapist had me to do was, and I read later where Navy SEALs were taught to do this same exercise. It's called the square breathing. And she has me practice it 3 times a day, or she wants me to practice it every day. And it's basically just an inhale for 4 seconds, a hold it for 8 seconds, and then exhale for 7 seconds. And practicing that skill helps you whenever, you know, if you get some kind of weird pain, and, you know, you need to talk yourself through it. You know, that's been helpful. And then, you know, I went back for follow-up test, you know, for a follow-up stress test, follow-up echocardiogram. You know, my cardiologist probably got annoyed with the list of questions I had. So, you know, they've kicked the tires pretty good to where, you know, I'm convinced that my heart is fine. So just remind, you know, another thing that I learned in therapy was that you know, and you guys know this, is that we have between 60 or more than 60,000 thoughts a day. So, you know, so managing what thought, and most of them are repetitive. So managing what thoughts you have is very important. So, you know, if I start trying to go down the wrong path, stopping it kind of at the thought level, you know, and redirecting, not chasing thoughts like she is, you know, chasing thoughts down like she talks about. It's been very helpful. If I can just, you know, if I have a thought that's, you know, sort of triggering, just let it go, you know, and you're reminding myself again, positive, you know, thoughts are very important. And that, you know, the odds of this happening again are very remote. So, you know, so the breathing techniques and the, you know, trying to manage your thought patterns have been very helpful.
Breathing is like the reset button of the body. Like you can't control your heart rate. You can't control the sweat. You can't control, you know, what your ears do, your eyes do. I mean, there's a lot of things like that happen automatically in those stress moments when your amygdala sends that fight or flight mechanism in, everything reacts. And the only thing you've really got complete control of is your breathing. And then that resets everything else. So getting the breathing in, and then when you start doing that, it sort of sends a signal to your brain that says, hey, we're good. You know, I got this under control. We're fine. And so, you know, the body kind of can start to calm itself down, but that amygdala, you know, is just automatic. And so we talked about before too, that the similar is same in the brain. You know, it sees something that was like what happened. You know, people who've been overseas and been in fights, you know, and things where they've got PTSD, it's the brain going, hey, this is the same thing. This is the same situation. Or that, like you said, that feeling in your chest then serves as that. And you go in, oh no, it's the same thing. And so the brain doesn't know the difference sometimes. So being able to have those techniques is helpful not only to you, but for others.
I was at a conference yesterday that I was speaking at, and one of the keynote guys was talking to a bunch of teenagers, and he said, when you're in these moments of anxiousness or anxiety, one of the best things you can do is serve. And I thought it was really interesting to get the attention. Of course, he was talking more, not maybe a specific instance, but just people that are anxiety has just driven their life to where they're just maybe not functioning the way that they want to be. But I find it interesting that you mentioned earlier in the podcast about creating a 501c or a 501c3. And so I'm curious, you know, what have you done to serve others based on the situation that you found yourself in there with your family?
Yeah. So I talked about this a little bit in the video, but I had this, and I'm sure a lot of people in the Mars Hill community will hear this podcast, but the muscle shows in the Mars Hill community were so good to us when all this happened. I mean, when I was at the hospital, I mean, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of people that came to support, and you know, people reached out on social media, and there were literally tens of thousands of people praying for us. And whenever, you know, you feel that, it makes you want to reciprocate in some way. So, you know, I spent probably a couple months trying to figure out what, you know, I need to do something in return, you know, to try to give back, you know, what's been, you know, so liberally given to me. So I was out walking one day, and I had the idea of setting up a nonprofit. The machine, the Lucas machine I mentioned earlier, those things cost about $15,000 a piece. And Muscle Shoals Fire Department, they're one of the few fire departments that have access to those machines because they're so expensive. So I had the idea of creating a nonprofit to raise funds to purchase those for fire departments. So I started the process of trying to get 501c3 approval in December, and I got my letter about 5 days ago saying they had been approved. Nice. So it was, you know, it was kind of an emotional moment because it took so long, and there were so many times where I didn't think it was ever going to get approved. You know, I've got a board put into place. So we really want to take a three-pronged approach. Down in South Alabama and in Seattle, we heard about this as well. And we're in the exploratory phases of this, but at schools down south and in a lot of areas, not in our area, not in our area, different organizations will go in and screen athletes for pre-existing heart conditions. And I think, a lot of that can be done with an EKG, but we're exploring that. And we want that to be a part of what we do, as the second part of our endeavors. And then the third part is just anything we can do by way of supporting mental health. We want that to be a component, because we just see a huge need with people that are going through, similar things. And, before I found therapy, I learned a lot on YouTube, and you really have to dig a lot of this out on your own. I just don't think you should have to do that. Not in 2023. I think that information should be accessible. So we're trying to figure that out, but I think we're going to be able to award our first Lucas machine in October. And the first one's going to the Muscle Shoals Fire Department. They need another one. So, and then, our goal is to do as many of those as possible, and we'll see where God takes it. But, we've got some access to some resources, and, we're going to take our story everywhere we can take it. And, our sermon this morning was talking about anxiety. That's weird. And, and the minister, made the point of, if you can stop thinking about you so much and start, to your point, serving others and focusing on, a mission, then that'll go a long way to help. So, the most emotional I've probably been about all this recently is when I got that 501c3 letter last week. I mean, it was awesome. A great day.
Yeah, that's great. Website or number?
Website. We've about got the website finished. We've only got a Twitter page set up now. The handle is at Lifesaver the 1, and the 1 is just the number 1. So anyway, I haven't overtly asked anyone yet, although we've had some conversations with a lot of people who want to participate, because I was waiting on that 501c3 letter. Although we did put a link, I think, on Facebook and Twitter, to where if anyone wanted to donate. The approval was backdated to December the 11th, so anyone that's contributed up to this point is tax deductible.
Well, we've been trying to get you on for a while, and we've been having a hard time. Sound like we timed it up.
Perfect timing. Yeah, so. Perfect timing. So we're about to go live. Yeah, we're about to go live with all of it, and so
we'll be happy to send that out and get that out with some of our emails and stuff whenever you get it. That'd be awesome.
So yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, it felt it feels really good to feel like we can maybe make a difference, and through all of our endeavors, if we can save one person, it'll be worth it. Because I had a heart attack. I chose to have a heart attack at the perfect place, and it was, God had it all lined up. Because if you have a heart attack in Lexington, I'll pick on Lexington because that's where I'm from. They should have the same tools. Yeah, they should have a Lucas. They should have the same tools that if you have it on Wilson Down Road like I did, and and I was blessed enough for them to have the equipment to get the job done.
Awesome.
And so you talked a little bit about your kids earlier. You've got one that's graduated, right? One that's a senior, and then I know you got one that's in first grade because he was in Cyrus's class last year, Miller, and they played basketball together.
Yeah.
And then you have what's the fourth one?
Sawyer.
How old is he?
Ninth grader. Did you
ninth grade? No, I didn't mention him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was leaving one out.
I do that sometimes too.
Yeah.
So no big deal.
Well, me too. So there's always let's see, did I get them all? But and so, you're able to kind of, like you said, second chance, you got all this time with the kids and doing stuff with them and loving it.
Yeah, that's the thing, so now I've never been really an early morning person, but now I am. And after, dying for about 45 minutes and coming back, you have a completely different perspective, on everything. And something as little as the sunrise in the morning, I would have never stopped and, appreciated that, that God does that for us every day. And then, you know, getting to see your kids grow and have fun. And I can be that sports parent if, you know, if I want, you know, if I chose to, but I'm not. You know, I'm not going to get into my kids' sports. I'm very proud of them, and that's been so much fun. So I appreciate that. So, yeah, just so much appreciation and so much gratitude for everything that happens now. There's just a different appreciation. And one time I was talking with my therapist, and I was like, you know, will I ever get back to the way it was before? And she was like, no, it's never going to be back to the way it was before, you know, with an event like that. But she was like, would you really want it to be? Yeah. And you know, I started crying, and then I was, you know, I was thinking, no, I wouldn't, because we're better off in every phase of our life because this happened. And, you know, I would never want to put my friends and family through that again, but I wouldn't change it, you know, because, you know, we're all completely different.
What all good is going to come from it too. I mean, you've started so many good things and good paths. So I was just going to ask a funny question, but I was hoping Melissa would be here, because I wanted to ask, like, how many times in arguments does she go, you know, I could have left you on the side of the road?
Yes. Yeah. She's played that trump card a couple of times.
Okay.
And I'm so sorry. She's so much more fun than me, and so much more entertaining. And she would have cracked on me quite a bit. So I'm sorry that she didn't make it. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, she's always got that for sure.
For Travis's knowledge, he may or may not know this, but she is the granddaughter of Robert Huffaker, correct?
Yeah, we're the most Mars Hill people there are. We go back to like 1962, yeah. I think.
You know Mr. Huffaker, right? You remember him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did he paddle you? Did he paddle you?
I don't think so. No, I don't think I ever got one.
I
was only there for a year and a half.
He got on to me, and he'll remind me every time I see him. He would remind me. He'd say, you know, I had to stop you for running in the hallway. So he always did that.
Well, I was going to go back to your the little, was it the blinking light that you were like afraid you're going to get shocked?
Yeah.
When I got home from the hospital, at some point I was taking a shower, and they had left a little sticker with a metal knob on it that I guess they had used to monitor my heart at some point, but they had left it on me. And I was, you know, taking a shower, and I want to talk about almost having to come apart. Like, I thought they had left something inside me, because I didn't quite realize that the tube had run up my arm into my aorta and pumped that medicine. And so, like, they pull that tube out, and I'm like, where was all of that, you know? And it was up my arm. So, like, I get home, and I'm find this tube, this knob, and I'm like, Whitney, they left something inside me, you know, and then it just ends up being a sticker that we just pull off.
One of those that rips your skin off.
Nothing like a blinking light. I can't imagine how much, you know, that would have freaked me out. But just the sticker alone, I was like, ah.
Yeah. You yell, clear. When it started.
It was at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, my goodness.
And it started beeping. And Melissa, and I kind of blacked out, I think, because Melissa, she told me later that I was saying, no, 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 no. So we had this phone number that we were to call, and we got a crash course in the vest while we're at the hospital. There was so much going on. Yeah. So anyway, so there was I do remember she was trying to call the number, and her hands were shaking so bad she couldn't even hold the phone hardly. But anyway, we found out that, yeah, it actually makes a siren noise when it's going to shock you. So that's enough to cause you to have a heart attack in and of itself. But anyway, yeah, I can imagine this. Yeah, it was probably very stressful to think you still had something in you, Travis, that shouldn't be there. So I can appreciate that.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to be with us, to share your story. We're so thankful for everything you're doing there in that community. And I'm sure your work in that and your wife's work in that will be beneficial.
Thank you guys for all that you do. I mean, you're a bright light in the world by trying to, you know, talk about these topics. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.